They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but sometimes it's served in a leather-bound chair inside a lawyer's office, printed on legal stationery. Mark thought he had won. He had the younger mistress, the new sports car, and he had successfully humiliated his ex-wife, Sarah, leaving her with absolutely nothing during the divorce proceedings. He even laughed in her face as she signed the papers. But Mark made one critical calculation error. He forgot who Sarah's father really was. He thought the old man was just a retired mechanic. He was wrong. Dead wrong. And by the time the executor of the estate, Mr. Arthur Sterling, cleared his throat to read the first line of the last will and testament, it was already too late for Mark to run. This is the story of how a cheating husband lost everything in a single heartbeat. The rain in Seattle was relentless that Tuesday, hammering against the windows of the small, drafty apartment Sarah now called home. It was a far cry from the sprawling suburban colonial house she had spent the last 10 years decorating, cleaning, and maintaining for Mark. That house, with its granite countertops and the master bath she had tiled herself, now belonged to Mark, and by extension, it belonged to Jessica. Jessica was 24. She was a fitness instructor with a laugh that sounded like wind chimes and a morality that was non-existent. Sarah sat at her wobbly kitchen table, staring at the divorce decree that had been finalized only 48 hours prior. It was done. 10 years of marriage dissolved. Mark had been ruthless. His lawyer, a shark named Richard Vance, had argued that since Sarah had quit her job as a marketing associate to support Mark's startup business in the early years, working for free, keeping the books, and managing the office without an official salary, she had no documented income contribution. They argued she was a financial drain. Mark had won. He kept the business. He kept the house. He kept the savings. He threw her a bone, a pitiful alimony settlement that would barely cover rent in this studio apartment for a year. "You should be grateful, Sarah," Mark had sneered in the courthouse hallway, adjusting his silk tie. Jessica was waiting for him by the elevator, pretending to look at her phone but smirking. "Most guys wouldn't give you anything. You've let yourself go. You're boring. Honestly, I'm doing you a favor. Now you can find someone at your level." He had looked her up and down with genuine disgust. Sarah was 32, wearing a coat she'd had since college. She looked tired. Grief and betrayal have a way of aging a person faster than time. "My father is sick, Mark," Sarah had said quietly, her voice trembling. "I needed that money for his care facility. You know that." Mark had laughed, a short, sharp bark of a laugh. "Your dad? The mechanic? Look, Sarah, it's not my problem that your old man didn't save for retirement. Maybe if he'd been smarter, he wouldn't be rotting in a state home. Don't guilt-trip me. I'm done carrying dead weight." That was the last time she spoke to him, 2 days ago. Now, her phone buzzed on the table. It was a number she didn't recognize. "Hello?" Sarah answered, her voice raspy. "Ms. Sarah Miller." The voice was baritone, professional, and clipped. "This is Arthur Sterling. I am an attorney representing the estate of Mr. Henry Miller." Sarah's heart stopped. "My father? Is he?" "I'm afraid so, Miss Miller. He passed away peacefully in his sleep last night. I am truly sorry for your loss." The phone slipped from her ear, clattering onto the table. She didn't cry immediately. The shock was a physical blow, a cold wave that numbed her fingers. Her father, Henry, was the only person who had ever truly loved her without condition. He had been a quiet man, a man of grease-stained hands and few words. He had run a small auto repair shop in a gritty part of town for 40 years. She picked the phone back up. "I need to arrange the funeral." That has already been taken care of, per his instructions, Mr. Sterling said gently. However, your presence is required at my office this Friday at 10 a.m. for the reading of the will. It is mandatory. Will? Sarah wiped her eyes. My dad didn't have anything, Mr. Sterling. He lived in a one-bedroom rental. He had his tools and his truck. There's nothing to read. There are instructions, Miss Miller, and there is a stipulation regarding your former husband, Mr. Mark Davison. Sarah froze. Mark? Why would Mark be involved? The will explicitly names him as a required attendee. If he does not attend, the entirety of the estate, whatever it may be, will be forfeited to the state. Sarah felt a surge of nausea. She had to call Mark. She had to ask the man who had just destroyed her life to come to a meeting for her dead father, a man Mark had openly mocked. When she finally dialed Mark's number, he sent her to voicemail twice. On the third try, he answered, breathless, with loud gym music in the background. What do you want, Sarah? The ink is dry. Stop stalking me. My dad died, Sarah said bluntly. There was a pause. Oh, well, sucks to be him. I need you to come to a lawyer's office on Friday for the will reading. Mark burst out laughing. A will reading? For what? His collection of rusty wrenches? Sarah, are you delusional? I'm not wasting my time coming to watch you inherit a 1998 Ford F-150. Please, Mark, the lawyer said if you don't come, I don't get anything. Even if it's just a few $100s, I need it. Please. Beg, Mark said. The cruelty in his voice was casual, easy. What? Beg me. Say, Mark, you are superior to me in every way. Please help your pathetic ex-wife. Sarah closed her eyes. She swallowed her pride, tasting bile. Mark, please help me. Fine, he sighed, sounding bored. I'll come, but I'm bringing Jessica. We have a lunch reservation downtown at noon, so make it quick. And Sarah, don't wear that grey coat. You look like a homeless person. Friday morning was crisp and cold. The law offices of Sterling, Halloway, and Vance were not located in a strip mall, as Sarah had expected for her father's attorney. They were located on the 45th floor of the Meridian Tower, the most expensive piece of real estate in the city. Sarah arrived early, wearing a simple black dress she had bought from a thrift store the day before. She felt small in the lobby, surrounded by marble floors and abstract art that cost more than her life's earnings. When the elevator doors opened, she saw them. Mark was wearing a navy bespoke suit, looking every inch the successful tech CEO he claimed to be. Jessica was draped on his arm, wearing a white cashmere dress that was entirely inappropriate for a reading regarding a death, but perfectly designed to show off her figure. Wow, Mark said as Sarah approached. This is a fancy building. Did your dad know a janitor here or something? Jessica giggled, hiding her mouth behind a manicured hand. Mark, be nice. Maybe he slipped and fell here and got a settlement. Let's just get this over with, Sarah said, keeping her eyes on the floor. They were ushered into a conference room that smelled of old money. The table was mahogany, long enough to seat 20. At the head of the table sat Arthur Sterling. He was an older man with silver hair and steel-rimmed glasses. He didn't stand when they entered. He simply watched them with eyes that seemed to weigh their souls. Sit, Mr. Sterling commanded. Mark pulled out a chair for Jessica, then sat himself down, checking his Rolex. Look, buddy, we've got somewhere to be. Can we skip the preamble? Just tell Sarah she gets the toolbox, and let us go. Mr. Sterling slowly removed his glasses and placed them on the leather folder in front of him. Mr. Davison, you are here solely because the deceased requested it. I would advise you to show some respect. You are in my house now. The authority in his voice was so absolute that even Mark shut up. Mr. Henry Miller, Sterling began, opening the folder, was a man of great privacy. He believed that a man's worth was determined by what he could build with his hands, not what he could brag about at a country club. Sterling looked at Sarah. "Sarah, your father loved you very much. He watched you from afar, even when you didn't know it. He watched you struggle to support this man's business for years. He watched you sacrifice your own dreams." Sarah nodded, tears welling up. "I know he did. He also," Sterling turned his cold gaze to Mark, "investigated the business dealings of Mr. Davison." Mark shifted in his seat. "Excuse me? Who do you think you are?" "Mr. Davison, please remain silent," Sterling snapped. "Now, to the assets." Sterling cleared his throat. Mr. Henry Miller was known to most as a mechanic. However, in 1982, Henry Miller developed a patent for a hydraulic valve system used in deep-sea oil drilling. He licensed this patent to 3 of the largest energy companies in the world. The room went silent. The air conditioning hummed. "He never sold the patent," Sterling continued. "He simply collected the royalties. He invested those royalties into a diversified portfolio of real estate, tech stocks. Ironically, buying heavily into the competitors of your startup, Mr. Davison, and municipal bonds." Mark's mouth hung slightly open. Jessica looked confused. "What does that mean?" she whispered. "It means," Sterling said, "that the poor mechanic left an estate valued, as of this morning's market opening, at $84 million. Mark choked. He physically choked on his own saliva. He coughed, his face turning red. 84 million. Plus change," Sterling said dryly. Sarah sat, frozen. She couldn't breathe. "There must be a mistake. My dad, he drove a truck with a taped-up window." "He was frugal, Sarah. He wanted to make sure you were taken care of, but he was afraid that if you knew about the money, you would be targeted by unscrupulous individuals." Sterling's eyes darted to Mark. "Well," Mark said, his voice suddenly an octave higher, a sweaty smile breaking out on his face. He leaned forward, ignoring Jessica. "This is incredible news. Sarah, honey, did you hear that? 84 million. God, your dad was a genius, a secret genius. I always said he had a spark in him." Jessica looked at Mark, her eyes narrowing. "Mark?" Mark waved her off. "Sarah, baby, this changes everything. I mean, obviously, the divorce. We were just going through a rough patch. Stress, you know. But family is family." Sterling watched Mark with a look of pure predation. "Mr. Davison, I haven't finished reading the will." Right, go ahead," Mark said, rubbing his hands together. "We're all ears." "The will stipulates the distribution of assets into 2 categories," Sterling read. "Category A, the liquid assets and real estate. Category B, the debts and liabilities." "Debts?" Mark asked. "Item 1, Sterling read louder. To my beloved daughter Sarah, I leave the entirety of my financial portfolio, the real estate holdings, and the patent rights. This inheritance is placed in a trust, solely in her name, protected from any marital claims." Mark slumped back, but then rallied. "Okay, protected from marital claims, sure, but we can work that out. Sarah and I have a history." "Item 2, Sterling continued, his voice dropping to a gravelly low. "To my son-in-law, Mark Davison." Mark straightened up. "Yes? He left me something?" "I do leave you something, Mr. Davison," Sterling read from the paper. "I leave you the opportunity to learn a lesson." "A lesson?" Mark asked, confused. "Mr. Miller purchased something else 2 weeks ago," Sterling said. "He purchased the debt on your business, Davison Tech. Apparently, you took out several high-interest bridge loans to buy that sports car and finance your lifestyle with Miss Jessica here. You are currently leveraged at about 400%. Mark went pale. How? How did he buy my debt? Through a shell company. He owns your loans, Mr. Davison. And the will instructs the executor, me, to call in those loans immediately upon his death." Sterling closed the folder with a heavy thud. "Mr. Davison, you owe the estate of Henry Miller $4.2 million. And since the loans are now called, you have, well, by the time we finish this meeting, you will have about 24 hours to pay in full before we begin asset seizure. That includes your business, your house, and yes, the car you drove here today." The silence in the room was heavy, suffocating, and for Sarah, absolutely electric. The silence in the conference room was broken by the sound of Jessica's purse snapping shut. It was a sharp, mechanical sound that seemed to echo like a gunshot. She shifted in her seat, physically angling her body away from Mark, a subtle movement that Arthur Sterling noted with a microscopic raising of his eyebrow. Mark, however, was too busy staring at the folder in front of Sterling to notice his girlfriend's retreat. His face had gone from a healthy, arrogant flush to a sickly shade of grey. He loosened his tie, his fingers fumbling with the silk knot. "This is illegal," Mark stammered, his voice cracking. He looked around the room as if searching for a hidden camera. "You can't just buy someone's debt and call it in. There are laws. There are grace periods. My lawyer, Richard Vance, he works in this very building. I'll get him down here right now." Arthur Sterling didn't blink. He simply reached into the folder and slid a single sheet of paper across the mahogany table. "Mr. Vance was actually the one who facilitated the transaction," Sterling said calmly. "He represented the bank that sold your debt to Mr. Miller's holding company. He was quite eager to close the deal, given your history of missed payments over the last quarter. Conflict of interest waivers were signed by you when you engaged his firm for your divorce, burying the clause in the fine print on page 42. You really should read what you sign, Mark." Mark snatched the paper up. His eyes darted back and forth across the lines. His hands were shaking so hard the paper rattled. "He sold me out," Mark whispered. "Vance sold me out?" "He acted in the best interest of his financial institution clients," Sterling corrected. "But let's not get bogged down in legalese. The reality is simple. You owe the money, today. Or we begin liquidation proceedings immediately." Mark looked at Sarah. For the first time in years, he didn't look at her with contempt or boredom. He looked at her with a desperate, hungry intensity. He saw her not as his discarded wife, but as a life raft in a storm he was drowning in. He stood up and walked around the table, ignoring Sterling's command to sit. He knelt beside Sarah's chair. It was a theatrical gesture, one he had used when he proposed, and one he used whenever he had screwed up significantly during their marriage. "Sarah," he said, his voice dropping to a husky, intimate whisper. He reached for her hand, but she pulled it into her lap. "Sarah, look at me. This is crazy, right? Your dad. He was playing a joke, a sick joke. But we can fix this." Sarah looked down at him. "We?" "Yes, we," Mark said, his eyes wide and pleading. "Baby, I know I hurt you. I know things got messy at the end. But think about the last 10 years. We built a life together. You supported me when I had nothing. You're the reason I succeeded. I said some things I didn't mean because I was angry, because I was scared of losing us, and I lashed out. But I never stopped loving you." From across the table, Jessica let out a loud, incredulous scoff. "Are you kidding me right now? You told me she was a frigid anchor, dragging you down." Mark whipped his head around, snapping at Jessica. "Shut up! You don't know anything about us. This is a marriage. It's complicated." He turned back to Sarah, his sweaty palms gripping the armrest of her chair. "Sarah, listen. Kick that gold digger out. It's just you and me. We can take this 84 million and the business, and we can start over. Anywhere you want. Paris? You always wanted to go to Paris. We can go tonight. First class. Just tell this lawyer to forgive the debt. Tell him we're back together. Please, Sarah. For us." Sarah stared at him. She looked at the sweat beading on his forehead, the desperation in his eyes. She remembered the nights she had cried herself to sleep while he was working late with Jessica. She remembered how he had called her pathetic for asking for gas money last week. Something inside her chest, something that had been broken and jagged for months, suddenly snapped back into place. It wasn't forgiveness. It was clarity. "Mark," Sarah said softly. "Yes, baby." He leaned in, hope flaring in his eyes. "You didn't want me when I was the daughter of a mechanic," Sarah said, her voice gaining strength with every word. "You threw me away like garbage because you thought you could do better. You didn't love me. You loved what I did for you. You loved that I did your laundry and cooked your meals and balanced your books so you could play CEO. No, that's not true. It is true," she cut him off, standing up. Mark had to scramble back to avoid being hit by her chair. She towered over him as he knelt on the floor. "And the funny thing is, Mark, if you had just been decent, if you had just been kind during the divorce, I might have helped you. If you had treated my father with an ounce of respect, he wouldn't have done this." She looked at Sterling. "Mr. Sterling, does the estate have a plan for the liquidation of Davison Tech?" Sterling smiled, a genuine shark-like smile. "We do. We have a buyer lined up for the assets, a competitor who is willing to pay cents on the dollar for your inventory." "Good," Sarah said. Mark scrambled to his feet, his face twisting from begging to rage in a split second. "You bitch! You vindictive little bitch! You can't do this to me! I built that company. Me! Not you! Not your dead loser father!" "Security," Sterling said into an intercom on the table. Two large men in dark suits entered the room almost instantly. They had been waiting. "Get off me!" Mark screamed as one of them grabbed his arm. He thrashed, knocking over a pitcher of water. "Jessica! Call the police! Jessica!" Jessica stood up, smoothing her white dress. She picked up her clutch. She looked at Mark, currently being restrained by a guard. And then she looked at Sarah. "I'm single," Jessica announced to the room. "And for the record, he told me he was worth 10 million. If I knew he was broke, I wouldn't have looked at him twice." She looked at Sarah. "You can have him back, sweetie. I don't date charity cases." With a click of her heels, Jessica walked out of the room, not even glancing back as Mark screamed her name. "Get him out," Sterling ordered. "You'll hear from my lawyers," Mark shrieked as he was dragged backward, his heels skidding on the plush carpet. "This isn't over, Sarah. I'll take half. I'll sue you for emotional distress. I'll take everything." The heavy oak doors slammed shut, cutting off his screams. The silence that followed was heavy, but it wasn't oppressive anymore. It felt clean. Sarah sank back into her chair, her legs trembling. She put her face in her hands. She didn't know if she wanted to laugh or vomit. "Breathe, Sarah," Sterling said gently. He poured a glass of water from a fresh pitcher on the sidebar and placed it in front of her. "Take a moment." Sarah drank the water, her hands shaking. Did he really plan all that?" "He did," Sterling said. "Henry was a meticulous man. He spent the last 6 months of his life moving chess pieces, so that checkmate would occur exactly when you needed it most. But the show with Mr. Davison was just the fireworks. That wasn't the real reason he wanted you here. Sterling reached into his briefcase again. This time he didn't pull out a legal document. He pulled out a thick, cream-colored envelope. It was sealed with red wax, stamped with a fingerprint. "This is for you," Sterling said softly. "To be read only after the vermin," his words, not mine, has been removed from the premises. Sarah took the envelope. It felt heavy, textured. On the front, in her father's blocky, all-caps handwriting, was written, "To my Sarah Bear." The nickname made her throat tighten. She broke the wax seal. Inside were 3 pages of handwritten text on yellow legal pad paper. The smell of motor oil and peppermint tobacco wafted from the pages. Her father's scent. It was so visceral it felt like he was standing right behind her. "My dearest Sarah," the letter began. "If you are reading this, then the old ticker finally gave out. Don't cry for me. I've had a good run, and I'm tired. I'm ready to go see your mother again. I miss her yelling at me for tracking grease on the carpet. I know today has been a shock. I know Mr. Sterling has just dropped a bomb on you about the money. I'm sorry I lied to you all these years. I'm sorry I let you think we were scraping by. But you have to understand, Sarah, money does strange things to people. I saw what it did to my brother, your Uncle Ted, when he won that lottery in '98. It ate him alive. I didn't want that for you. I wanted you to build your own character, to know the value of $1, to find a man who loved you for you, not for a bank balance. I thought Mark was that man. For a while. But I was watching, Sarah. I was always watching. You remember 3 years ago, when Mark's company almost went under? The angel investor who saved him with an anonymous injection of cash? That was me. I wanted to see if success would make him grateful. Instead, it made him arrogant. You remember last Christmas, when he didn't come to dinner? He said he was stuck at the airport in Chicago. I hired a private investigator, Sarah. I have photos of him in a ski lodge in Aspen with a woman named Chloe. I didn't tell you because I saw how hard you were fighting for your marriage. I didn't want to be the one to break your heart. I wanted you to see it for yourself. I knew you would, eventually. You're smart, like your mother. But when he served you those divorce papers, when I found out he had cleaned out your joint accounts and left you with nothing, that crossed the line. No one hurts my little girl. No one. So, I initiated Protocol Clean Slate. That's what Mr. Sterling and I call it. I bought his debt. I bought the building his office is in. I even bought the lease on that fancy car he loves more than he ever loved you. By the time you finish reading this, tow trucks will be hooking it up in the parking garage. But this isn't about revenge, Sarah. Revenge is empty. This is about freedom. The 84 million is yours. But there is a condition, a request from a grumpy old man. I don't want you to hoard it. I don't want you to become like Mark. I want you to use it. I want you to go to art school like you wanted to when you were 19. I want you to travel. I want you to start that bakery you used to talk about. The money is a tool, not a trophy. And one last thing. In the bottom of this envelope, there is a key. It's for a safe deposit box at the First National Bank. Inside, you won't find money. You'll find the deed to a property in Tuscany, Italy. Your mother and I bought it 30 years ago. It's a ruined farmhouse on a hill involving olive trees. We dreamed of fixing it up together. We never got the chance. It's yours now. Go there, fix it, heal. You are stronger than you think, Sarah. You survived a man who tried to make you feel small. Now show the world how big you really are. Love, Dad. Sarah lowered the letter. The paper was spotted with her tears. She hadn't realized she was crying until the drops hit the yellow page. She felt a strange sensation in her chest. The heavy, crushing weight of the divorce, the fear of poverty, the humiliation. It was lifting. It was being replaced by a fierce, burning warmth. Her father hadn't just left her money, he had left her a sword and shield. He had been protecting her from the shadows the entire time. She wiped her face with the back of her hand and looked up at Mr. Sterling. The lawyer was watching her with a softened expression, holding out a box of tissues. "He really bought the building?" Sarah asked, her voice thick with emotion. "He did," Sterling nodded. "We own the Meridian Tower. Technically, you are now Mark's landlord. Well, until we evict him next week for violation of the morality clause in his lease." A small, genuine laugh escaped Sarah's lips. "Morality clause? Your father insisted on it." Sterling's eyes twinkled. He had a very specific definition of morality that included not being a cheating scumbag. Sarah took a deep breath. She felt the key in the envelope. It was small, cold, and heavy. "Mr. Sterling," she said, sitting up straighter. "What happens next?" "Next," Sterling said, opening a new file. "We execute the will. We transfer the funds. And then we deal with the fallout. Because, Ms. Miller, men like Mark Davison do not go quietly. He is cornered, humiliated, and desperate. We need to be prepared." "Prepared for what?" "Mark has already been making phone calls from the lobby," Sterling said, glancing at a tablet on the table. "He is calling news outlets. He is spinning a story that you and I defrauded him. He is going to try to play the victim in the court of public opinion, since he cannot win in a court of law. He is going to try to destroy your reputation." Sarah's eyes hardened. 10 minutes ago, that news would have terrified her. She would have wanted to hide. But she touched the letter again. "You are stronger than you think." "Let him try," Sarah said. Her voice was steady. "He thinks he's fighting the ex-wife he bullied. He doesn't realize who he's actually dealing with." "And who is that?" Sterling asked, intrigued. "The daughter of Henry Miller," she said. "And I'm done being the victim." At that moment, the intercom buzzed. The receptionist's voice came through, sounding frantic. "Mr. Sterling, I'm sorry to interrupt, but Mr. Davison is back. He's in the lobby with 2 police officers. He's claiming you've stolen his property, and he's demanding to be let back in." Sterling sighed and looked at Sarah. "Shall we?" Sarah stood up. She smoothed her thrift store dress. She lifted her chin. "Let's go," she said. The elevator ride down to the lobby was silent, but it was a silence charged with kinetic energy. Sarah watched the floor numbers tick down, 40, 39, 38, and with each passing floor, she felt the old Sarah, the submissive housewife who apologized for taking up space, dying off. In her place, something harder and sharper was forming. When the brass doors slid open, the lobby of the Meridian Tower was a chaotic scene. Mark was standing near the security desk, his face flushed a mottled red, gesturing wildly at 2 uniformed police officers. A small crowd of onlookers, business people in suits, couriers, and building staff, had gathered, phones out, recording the meltdown. "They are thieves!" Mark was shouting, his voice echoing off the high marble walls. "That lawyer, Sterling, he forged documents. And my ex-wife, she's mentally unstable. She's conspiring with him to embezzle my company assets. I want them arrested. I want a SWAT team up there." One of the officers, a weary-looking sergeant, was trying to calm him down. "Sir, if you could just lower your voice." "Don't tell me to lower my voice. Do you know who I am? I am the CEO of Davison Tech. I pay more in taxes than you make in a decade. Mr. Davison, Arthur Sterling's voice cut through the noise like a whip crack. Mark spun around. When he saw Sarah standing next to Sterling, flanked by the 2 private security guards, his eyes bulged. "There she is!" Mark pointed a shaking finger at Sarah. "Officer, arrest her! She stole my car keys! She stole my future!" Sarah stepped off the elevator. She didn't cower. She didn't look at her shoes. She walked straight toward the police officers, her heels clicking rhythmically on the floor. "Officers," Sterling said, stepping in front of Sarah. "I am Arthur Sterling, executor of the Miller estate and owner of this building. This individual, Mr. Davison, has been served with a trespassing notice and an eviction notice regarding his commercial lease on the 12th floor." Sterling handed a thick packet of documents to the sergeant. The sergeant flipped through them, his eyebrows raising. "This looks in order. The debt transfer, the asset seizure clause, it's all signed." He looked up at Mark. "Sir, according to this, you don't own the company anymore. The bank called the note, and the new owner exercised their right to immediate possession." "That's a lie!" Mark screamed. "It's a trick. Sarah, tell them. Tell them your dad was a broke mechanic." Sarah looked at Mark. The cameras from the bystanders were all trained on her. She realized this was the moment. Mark had tried to shame her in private. Now he was trying to destroy her in public. "My father," Sarah said, her voice clear and carrying across the lobby, "was a man of honor. He worked hard every day of his life. He didn't steal, he didn't cheat, and he didn't lie." She took a step closer to Mark. The crowd went silent. "You told everyone I was a burden, Mark. You told your mistress I was a gold digger. But the truth is, you spent every dime I had. You drained me dry. And now that the tables are turned, you aren't fighting like a man. You're throwing a tantrum like a child." "You shut up!" Mark lunged. It happened in slow motion. Mark bypassed the police officer, his hand raised as if to strike her, a reflex born of years of bullying, finally manifesting in physical violence. But he never reached her. One of Sterling's security guards, a man built like a vending machine, intercepted Mark mid-lunge. He twisted Mark's arm behind his back and slammed him face first into the security desk. "Assault on a civilian in the presence of law enforcement." The police sergeant sighed, pulling out his handcuffs. "That wasn't smart, sir." "Get off me! Do you know who I am?" Mark shrieked as the cold metal cuffs clicked around his wrists. "Yeah," the sergeant said, hauling him up. "You're the guy going to booking." As they dragged Mark toward the revolving doors, he twisted his head back, his eyes locking onto Sarah. He wasn't screaming anymore. He was smiling. It was a twisted, broken smile. "This isn't over, Sarah," he hissed. "You think you won? You think you can just walk away with millions? I know secrets, Sarah. I know about the warehouse. I know what your dad really did." The police shoved him through the doors and into the back of a squad car. The lobby was dead silent. Sterling adjusted his cufflinks. "The warehouse?" he muttered to himself, a flicker of concern crossing his face. "What did he mean?" Sarah asked, her heart racing again. "What warehouse?" Sterling turned to her, his face composing itself into a mask of professional reassurance. "Nothing. Just the ravings of a desperate man trying to scare you. Ignore him." But Sarah saw the look in Sterling's eyes. It was the first time the lawyer looked unsettled. "Mr. Sterling," Sarah said firmly, "if I am the owner of the estate, I need to know everything. What warehouse?" Sterling sighed. He looked around the lobby. "Not here. It's not safe here." "Where then?" "Italy," Sterling said. "The answers aren't in Seattle, Sarah. They're in Tuscany. The property your father left you. It's not just a vacation home. It was his archives. If Mark knows something, it's because he found something he shouldn't have. You need to go there, immediately. Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. My father was a mechanic. He invented a valve. That's it, right? Sterling looked at her, his expression unreadable. Your father was a man of many talents, Sarah, and he had many enemies. Mark was just a nuisance. There are others. You need to get to the villa. There is a man there named Gabriel. He was your father's most trusted associate. He will explain everything. Associate? Sarah asked. You mean like a business partner? I mean, Sterling said, like a bodyguard. The flight to Florence was a blur of first-class champagne Sarah didn't drink and a lie-flat bed she couldn't sleep in. Her mind was racing. Bodyguards, archives, warehouses. Her father fixed transmissions. He drank cheap beer on the porch on Sundays. Who was this man he had hidden from her? She rented a Fiat at the airport and drove south into the rolling hills of Tuscany. Under different circumstances, the view would have been breathtaking. The cypress trees standing like sentinels against the golden sunlight, the vineyards stretching endlessly. It was paradise. But Sarah was gripping the steering wheel so hard her knuckles were white. She followed the GPS coordinates Sterling had given her. They led her off the main highway, onto a secondary road, and then onto a gravel track that wound its way up a steep hill. The property was isolated. No neighbors for miles. As she crested the final hill, the ruined farmhouse came into view. It wasn't a farmhouse. It was a fortress. It was an ancient stone structure, built into the side of the cliff. It had high walls, a heavy iron gate, and a tower that looked like it had survived medieval sieges. It was beautiful, yes, but it was imposing. It looked like a place where secrets went to hide. Sarah pulled up to the iron gate. There was no keypad, no intercom, just a heavy, rusted chain. She got out of the car, clutching the key from the safe deposit box. The silence here was profound. Just the sound of crickets and the wind in the olive trees. "Hello?" she called out. Nothing. She approached the gate. As she reached for the chain, a voice spoke from the shadows of the stone wall. "Don't touch the chain, it's electrified." Sarah jumped back, gasping. A man stepped out from behind a large olive tree. He was tall, with dark hair tied back in a messy bun, and a beard that hadn't seen a trimmer in weeks. He wore work boots, jeans stained with soil, and a grey t-shirt. He held a pruning shear in one hand, but the way he held it suggested he knew how to use it as a weapon. "You must be Sarah," he said. His accent was American, but rough, like gravel in a mixer. Yes, I'm Sarah Miller. Who are you?" "Gabriel," he said. He didn't smile. He walked to the gate, pulled a rubber-insulated remote from his pocket, and clicked it. The electricity hummed down, and the gate swung open with a groan. "Drive the car inside. Don't leave it on the road. It makes you a target." Sarah hesitated. "Target?" "Mr. Sterling said you were a caretaker." Gabriel looked at her with eyes that were a startling, piercing blue. "Sterling calls me a lot of things. Caretaker is the polite one. Get the car inside, Sarah." She did as she was told, her heart hammering. She parked in the courtyard. The villa was even bigger up close. The stone was weathered, covered in ivy, but the windows were reinforced with modern steel shutters. Gabriel closed the gate behind her. "Your father said you were smart. He didn't mention you looked so much like him." "You knew him well?" Sarah asked, getting out of the car. "Better than anyone," Gabriel said. He tossed the shears onto a bench. "Come on, I've got coffee on. We have a lot to cover before the sun goes down." He led her into the main house. The interior was a shock. It wasn't a rustic ruin. It was completely modernized. high-end appliances, sleek furniture, and walls lined with monitors displaying security feeds of the perimeter. "What is this place?" Sarah asked, looking at the screens. "This," Gabriel said, pouring dark espresso into 2 small cups, "was Henry's command center. He didn't just invent a valve, Sarah. He designed security systems for high-risk assets, banks, government facilities, private vaults. He was the best in the world at keeping things locked up." Sarah sank onto a stool. "He was a mechanic." "That was his cover," Gabriel said. "He retired 20 years ago to raise you, but he kept this place active. He knew one day something from his past might come back, or someone." "Mark," Sarah whispered. "Mark?" Gabriel laughed, a short, humorless sound. "Mark is a gnat. Mark is a distraction. Your father wasn't worried about your ex-husband. He was worried about the people Mark was trying to sell to." Sarah froze. "Sell what?" Gabriel leaned across the island. "Mark didn't just cheat on you, Sarah. He was snooping. He found an old hard drive in your dad's garage about 6 months ago. He thought it was Bitcoin or something. It wasn't. It was the blueprints for a security grid your father designed for the Federal Reserve in the 90s. Sarah felt the room spin. "That's treason." "No, it's just highly classified and incredibly valuable to the wrong people. Mark has been trying to sell it on the black market to cover his debts. That's why your dad crushed him. He had to stop the sale. He bought the debt to bankrupt Mark so he couldn't travel, couldn't make the exchange. But Mark, he's desperate, and stupid men do dangerous things." Gabriel took a sip of his coffee. "Sterling handled the legal side. My job is the physical side. As long as you are inside these walls, you are safe. But you need to know, Mark isn't in jail." "What?" Sarah stood up. "I saw him arrested." "He made bail an hour ago," Gabriel said, casually, checking one of the monitors. "A third party posted it. An anonymous LLC. Someone wants him free. Someone wants what he claims to have." "He said he knows about the warehouse," Sarah said. Gabriel's eyes narrowed. "He said that?" "Yes. In the lobby." Gabriel slammed his cup down. "Damn it! Henry said the hard drive was encrypted. If Mark knows about the warehouse, he cracked the first layer." "What is the warehouse?" Sarah demanded. "It's not a what, it's a where," Gabriel said. He grabbed a set of keys from the counter. "And it's not in Seattle, it's here, under this house." He walked to a heavy bookshelf in the living room and pulled a specific book. The Count of Monte Cristo. The bookshelf clicked and swung open, revealing a steel elevator door. "Your father left you $84 million, Sarah," Gabriel said, punching in a code. "But that was just his checking account. The real inheritance is downstairs, and we need to secure it before Mark's new friends figure out where it is." The elevator doors opened. "Coming?" Gabriel asked. Sarah looked at the elevator, then at the rugged stranger who seemed to be the only person telling her the truth. She thought about her life a week ago, worrying about grocery bills and crying over a man who hated her. She stepped into the elevator. "Let's go," she said. As the doors closed, the security feed on the wall behind them flickered. On the screen showing the front gate, a black SUV had just pulled up to the bottom of the hill. It idled there for a moment, then cut its lights. Sarah didn't see it, but the red light on the console blinked rapidly. "Motion detected. Sector 4. The elevator descended deep into the limestone bedrock beneath the villa. When the heavy steel doors slid open, Sarah didn't find piles of gold or vintage cars. Instead, she stepped into a room bathed in the sterile hum of blue LED lights and cooling fans. It looked like the server room of a major tech corporation. "This is the warehouse?" Sarah asked, her voice echoing. "This is the leverage," Gabriel corrected, typing a sequence into the central glass terminal. Your father didn't just design security systems, Sarah. He built back doors. For 30 years, every corrupt bank and illicit arms dealer that used his software. He kept a record. Gabriel pulled up a screen listing names: politicians, conglomerates, pharmaceutical giants. He called it his insurance policy. That drive Mark stole contains the encryption keys. If Mark sells that key to the people on this list, they can delete their crimes. They will pay billions for that privilege. Suddenly, the room bathed in red light. A siren pulsed. Perimeter breach. "They're here," Gabriel said, pulling a pistol from a hidden holster. "Mark isn't capable of this. He brought mercenaries, pros who want that data scrubbed. We need to lock this down. If I trigger the scorched earth protocol, it magnets the drives, but we lose the leverage." "I don't want leverage," Sarah said, her eyes hardening. "I want my life back." On the security monitor, the villa's front door exploded inward. Armed figures swarmed the living room, with a disheveled, manic Mark Davison stumbling behind them. "Stay here," Gabriel ordered. "No." Sarah pressed the elevator button. "I'm the owner of this estate, and I'm going to evict them." The elevator rose, carrying them back into the lion's den. When the doors opened, the scene was chaos. 3 men in tactical gear trained their rifles on them instantly. "Hold fire!" Mark screamed, pushing forward. He looked wild, sweat pouring down his face. "Don't shoot her. She has the biometric code." He grinned at Sarah, a twisted, broken look. "Hello, Sarah. I knew the old man had a bunker. Give us the admin access, and maybe I'll let you keep the villa. I'll take the 80 million, of course." "You really don't get it, do you?" Sarah stepped out, ignoring the guns. She looked at the scarred leader of the mercenaries. "He didn't tell you the truth, did he?" The mercenary frowned. "Tell us what?" "Mark doesn't have the key," Sarah lied, her voice ringing with icy confidence. "The drive he stole was a decoy, a honeypot. My father knew Mark was snooping." Mark went pale. "She's lying. I have the files right here." He patted his pocket frantically. "Plug it in then," Sarah challenged. "See what happens. My father programmed a failsafe. If unauthorized hardware attempts to interface with the servers, the system doesn't just lock. It broadcasts the data, instantly, to the FBI, Interpol, and the New York Times." She checked her watch. "In fact, I have a dead man's switch running. If I don't enter my cancel code in 30 seconds, the secrets your employers want to hide get emailed to the world." It was a total bluff, but Sarah delivered it with the steel of a woman who had already survived the worst. The mercenary leader made a cold calculation. "Abort," he said into his radio. "We're leaving. We don't get paid for leaks." "No," Mark shrieked as the men began to back away. "You can't leave. Kill them. Take the code." When they ignored him, Mark snapped. He snatched a pistol from the waistband of the nearest retreating guard. "I'm not leaving empty-handed. I'm not going back to being nothing." He raised the gun, aiming wildly at Sarah. "Sarah!" Gabriel lunged in front of her. Bang! Gabriel grunted, spinning around as the bullet tore through his shoulder. Mark racked the slide to fire again, but a deafening shot rang out from the doorway. Mark dropped his gun, screaming and clutching his leg. Arthur Sterling stood in the shattered entrance, a smoking revolver in his hand. Behind him, the blue lights of the Italian Carabinieri flashed in the courtyard. "I apologize for the delay," Sterling said calmly, stepping over the debris. "Traffic coming out of Florence was terrible." Sarah dropped to her knees beside Gabriel, ripping a strip from her dress to bind his wound. "You're shot!" "Just a graze." Gabriel winced, looking at her with a pained smile. "That thing about the broadcast protocol? The honeypot?" "Total lie," Sarah admitted, tears in her eyes. "I learned from the best," Gabriel laughed softly. Across the room, police hauled a sobbing Mark to his feet. He looked at Sarah one last time, defeated, small, and pathetic. "Sarah," he whimpered, "please, we were married." "We were married," Sarah said, her voice devoid of pity. "But I divorced you. And my father. He just finished the paperwork." 3 months later, the Tuscan sun was warm on the terrace. The villa no longer looked like a fortress. The shutters were open, and the scent of jasmine filled the air. Gabriel walked out, carrying 2 glasses of wine. His arm was fully healed. "Mr. Sterling called," Gabriel said. "The trial is over. Mark got 20 years. Corporate espionage, fraud, attempted murder. Jessica testified against him for a plea deal." "Good," Sarah said, feeling nothing but peace. Mark was a chapter she had finally closed. "He also asked about the servers." Gabriel sat beside her. "He wants to know if you're going to keep the leverage." "I told him to wipe them," Sarah said. "Scorched earth. I don't need leverage over the world, Gabriel. I have enough." "So," Gabriel smiled, a warmth in his eyes that had nothing to do with the sun. "You are a free woman with $84 million and a very handsome, unemployed bodyguard. What now?" Sarah took his hand. "I was thinking of starting that bakery. But first, I think I need a tour guide. I hear Paris is beautiful this time of year." Gabriel grinned. "I know a place in Montmartre. Best croissants in the world." "Then pack your bags," Sarah said, raising her glass. They clinked glasses as the sun set over the hills, casting golden shadows over a life that was finally, truly, her own. Mark thought he could break Sarah because he mistook her kindness for weakness. He thought money was power and status was everything. But in the end, he learned that the most dangerous person in the room isn't the one shouting. It's the one quietly holding the keys. Sarah didn't just inherit a fortune, she inherited her self-worth. What do you think? Did Mark deserve 20 years? Or should Sarah have used the server data to get even more revenge? And if you found out your quiet father was secretly a millionaire genius, what's the first thing you would do? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of karma and justice, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a new story. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.